Hey everyone, it's Amy with WeFreestyle.com. I'm A McKnight on Instagram.com, and today, instead of doing a formal podcast, I'm going to be taking you step by step through the process of making this top, which I am calling my Ebbs and Flow top. So let's get to it. All right, so the first thing we're going to look at is what you will need in order to be able to make this top. So the first thing you're going to need is two widths of weaving. You're going to need a piece of weaving that is 8 to 10 inches wide, and you're going to need a piece that is 15 to 16 inches in width. Both of these are things that you've woven on your rigid head loom. You'll need a blunt sewing needle, matching thread or yarn like you use to weave, scissors, and a measuring tape. All right, so now I'm going to give you a little bit more of the measurements for each of the different pieces that you're going to be cutting from your fabric. First up, we're going to start with the straps. So you're going to use either 15-inch width fabric that's been woven maybe full width in a cricket, or 16-inch fabric, or that's fabric that maybe have been woven full width in your Ashford Samplet 16. Or if you have a wider loom, just, weave some fabric that is 15 to 16 inches width. You're going to need about a yard and 10 inches or so, because you need to have a yard and 6 inches left once you've cutted you've cutted your 2-inch strips. So you're going to cut two 2-inch strips from that fabric, and that will give you your straps. So here you're going to see me unfolding the fabric so that you can see. I cut it the night before, and so the day that I actually sewed this together, I am unfolding the fabric that I had cut with my rotary cutter, and there you see those two 2-inch strips. All right, so now the next thing we're going to go to our narrower piece of fabric, and you will have woven about 28 plus or minus inches that are 8 to 10 inch wide. So if you have one of those older Ashford Samplet looms, like the ones that are only 8-inch wide, great news! You can use that in this pattern to weave the top part of your bodice. And you want to weave it about, you want to have at least 28 inches plus or minus of fabric. You're going to cut the piece in half so that you have two pieces that are about 14 inches long and 8 to 10 inches wide. I freestyle sew just like I freestyle weave sew, and I just want you to know that it's not that big a deal. There's a lot of clothing that are meant to fit a wide variety, and this is one of those patterns that can do just that. So if you are a bigger person, then you may want to err on the larger size. If you're a smaller person, you can err on the smaller size. But with this pattern, you pretty much can wear it no matter what size you are. All right, so the final piece is pretty much the leftover yardage, or the yardage that was not cut when you cut those two straps off. And so you want to have about a yard and 10 inches to start with. And when you cut off the two straps, you're going to have a yard and 6 inches. I have these slides out of order, forgive me. I think I should mention also that you want to wash your fabric before you cut it. That will also contribute greatly to it not raveling on you. Another pro tip is if you use unmercerized yarn. I'm using cotton. If you're using a cotton yarn, you're not going to have as much of a raveling as you would if you use a mercerized, I think I said that right, yarn. So I have some pieces that I've made and I've used both, but it's a whole lot easier using the textured yarns that have a little bit of texture to them. And of course you want to wash everything before, wash and dry and everything before. I think I have an article about that on the website, so go check out WeFreestyle.com. And if it is in the early part of August 2019, it should be one of the first articles. Otherwise, just search for a crash course in cutting. Yes. All right. And it will link to the newer article that I will be writing about washing if it's not up by the time you're watching this video. All right, so that's it for what you're going to need as it comes to fabric. So let's start putting this thing together. We're going to start by making the straps. So you see here, I am taking one of the strap pieces and I am folding it in thirds long ways. I'll be honest with you, I actually had tried a couple of different ways to do the straps. I was going to sew it in half, and then I was going to try to turn it, and I did it, and it didn't work. It actually started to come undone. So one of the straps are a little bit more narrow than the other because I had to trim off the part that started to unravel, but all is good because it still works. So I ended up just folding it in thirds, and that is one that's folded. The other one is a little bit more fancy. You see I'm taking the pins out because I had it like I was just going to sew it in half and turn it, but that didn't work. So yes, we're going to fold this in thirds too, and being that this wasn't messed up, it's going to be a little bit wider, which is fine. If I have a piece that has a little bit more detail, then and then another piece, like they're not exactly the same, I will generally experiment on the plain piece and then try the piece that I want to have the details. So this one, I hadn't messed it up because it has that cute little fringe on the end, and yes, that's what saved it. All right, so now that we have pinned everything, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sew this. And I'm just really doing this like, I don't know if maybe if you Google Crispina French, like I take inspiration from all sorts of different fiber artists, and there was a time, okay, I promise you the story is going somewhere. There was a time when I did a whole lot of upcycling with various types of clothing, and one of my favorite fiber artists was Crispina French, and it's all lowercase, Crispina, and I think it's Ffrench. Anyway, she makes some of the coolest stuff, and she sews with like exposed sewing. You know, it's like really, she makes some like cool dolls. And so anyway, when I saw her doing that, that was one of the things that I kind of added to my sewing arsenal when hand sewing. You could, like, I'm pretty much whip stitching. If you can't tell what I'm doing, you can't see specifically what I'm doing, I am pretty much just going and whip stitching around. I'm encasing the raw edge, the cut edge on the side that is exposed in stitches, but I am not trying to hide in the raw edge. Pretty much when this is washed, because I'm, you know, going through the various layers and encasing the raw edge in the stitches, it's going to be fine. It's not going to unravel or anything like that. But it adds to the character. I am using the same yarn that I used to weave it. So I use several different threads in my warp, and I am using one of the thinner threads that I used in my warp. For those who are probably wondering, I did use, I think for this one, if I am right, and I think I did use the sample, I have I have three 10-inch looms. I know I didn't use the Cricut, so it's probably a 7.5 dent. I'm pretty sure that's what it was, or it could possibly be a 10 dent reed. It really doesn't matter. This pattern will work with any type of woven fabric. Let's see. So I finished this one up, and now I'm taking out my pins, and now I'm just going to go ahead and get ready to do the next one. All right, so through the magic of television, I am on to the end of that second strap, and I did it the exact same way. I folded it into thirds, and I just pretty much whip stitched the edge. As you can see, it's a little bit narrower than the other one, but it is fine. And I'm just pretty much just hiding my thread, going to snip it off, and then it's going to be time to work on hemming the bodices, preparing them to be sewn. Alright, so next up we're going to hem the cut edges of actually all the pieces. So we're going to start out by hemming the cut edges of the bodices, and then we're going to hem the cut edges on the skirt or bottom part. Now, I did a little bit of work off camera. I actually went and I pressed, just lightly pressed the edges and turned the edges over twice to encase that raw edge of the cut edge on each of the bodices, and so that, you know, when I sewed it, it would be encased in the stitching so it wouldn't ravel later on. What I'm doing is just doing a basic hem stitch. I'm just going in and just going around and just, you know, picking up a little bit on the front side, grabbing the turned edge, pretty much a hem stitch. Now, what I have, now if you notice, you may or may not have noticed, but the bodice part, one of the sides is a fringed edge or an edge at the beginning, and the other side is a cut edge on both sides. So when I did my measurements, I made sure to make the piece that was cut on both sides a little bit longer than the piece that was only hemmed on one side, because I was only going to hem one side of the other piece and I needed to hem both sides, and that would make them uneven. They're not perfectly even right now, but that makes them less uneven. So there you see I'm using my weaving thread to be able to thread my needle, but pretty much I'm just going to hem both edges. So I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to skip to the end of this one and let you see what I'm talking about on the other one. So let's pause. And through the magic that is video, we're going to come back with that other piece finished, and we're just going to hem one side of the cut piece that has the fringes on it. Now, let's see. You don't have to do this. You could cut both pieces from, you could have cut ends on both pieces, or you could use a piece that you had left over from something else. But I just wanted to show you this because, you know, you can use elements of the weaving that, like the cut edges, or as you saw in the case of that the strap that has that little finger fringe. Those were just pieces that I had pulled from the sides of my weaving, so my salvage edge wasn't perfectly straight, and I kind of did that on purpose, and I had some pieces pulled out on the side, and I just happened to cut that part off when I was cutting my straps, and I'm like, oh, that looks cute, let me use that. So when you're creating, you may not. Now here's the thing, when I was weaving this fabric, I had no clue that I would be making this top. I just was having fun as I was making the top, and some of the elements that came out in the process of weaving are going to be part of the elemental design, but they were not there on purpose. Alright, so now I'm going to do pretty much the same thing that I did with the other two pieces. I'm just going to hem one side. Now I'm only hemming one side of this because, as you'll see, or as you may have noticed when I open this up, the other side is the fringed edge, or the other edge that isn't cut is the edge at the beginning of the fabric. And so I'm not going to go through the whole process of showing you how I sew this, but you pretty much have gotten the idea. I'm just going to hem it just like you would hem the bottom of a skirt or a pair of pants or whatever. I ironed this, and I double folded it and pressed it down, so I'm just hemming it. You may have saw me there. I kind of shortened my thread. I don't like to, I like to make sure I have enough thread that I can successfully, you know, sew whatever I'm sewing without having to add any, but sometimes I go a little bit overboard. All right, so here we are. We're almost done. We're going to be sewing the bodice pieces to the skirt part or the bottom part. As you see it laying out there, you can see some of my patterns. Like I said, I didn't have this in mind when I was weaving any of this, but it's pretty cool that, you know, how they came together. I use some of the same warp colors, although I don't think they're exactly the same, but I use some of the same some similar warp when I warped the two different pieces. I wove the top piece on either my Samplet or my Becca, I can't remember which one, my Ashford Samplet or my Becca RH10 loom. The bottom one was woven on my Becca 24 SG loom, and I just wove it at 15 or about 16 inches wide, and when I washed it, it shrunk. But as you can see, there's a little bit of symmetry going on, not really, but that purple piece in the middle of the screen, that was, I just kind of got the feeling to do a clasped weft with some multiples of a white and purple slubby yarn, and so that's what that is in the middle. And you know, I honestly didn't really plan it, but hey, it worked out to come sort of in the mid back of the piece. You'll see that when I put it on. So right now I am just you know, preparing my needle and everything to sew the top pieces to the bottom of it. And you should notice that, or maybe if you cannot see it or tell in the video, I have both of the edges that are turned beside each other facing me, and so on the other side it's the part of the edge that isn't turned. And so, you know, even though I am sewing it by hand, there are parts like with the strap where I'm being kind of purposely, maybe not messy, but I'm doing purposeful. You know, you can see my stitches as I whip the edge of the strap, but here I'm actually sewing with the warp, and you can't really see it, but I'm following one of the warp threads, you know, and I'm using the same color that was used in the warp. So aside from the salvage edges on both pieces, you really can't see where I've sewn the pieces together. I've had a couple of people who saw this in the Rigid Heddle group that I'm in, and they're like, how are you not sticking yourself? Well, I'm using a blunt needle. It's a metal needle, but it's blunt, and so it's not poking me at all. It's just pretty blunt. I guess I could use a thimble, but I have not mastered that as yet. Maybe one day, but since I'm not really poking myself, it doesn't really bother me at all. So I'm going to show you how I do this part, and then I'll probably fast forward over to the other side, the end of me doing the other side. So when I'm sewing the two pieces together, I'm going to go ahead and sew the edge, so really close to the edge of that top piece. So I'm sewing really close to the edge of the top bodice piece, and I'm just going to keep going until I get to the very end, and then let's see, we're at the end now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and turn the whole thing over, and I'm going to sew the top edge of the bottom piece. So I actually have like two parallel lines of stitching, one on top of the other, and that's just, you know, to make sure that it's on there good. That bottom piece is going to be pulling on the top piece, and I just want to make sure that it is not going to fall. But I guess I could have done back stitches, but I didn't want to have that running line of stitches so that you could definitely see where I had sewn it. So I'm just doing two lines of relatively closely spaced running stitches on the top and the bottom to keep those edges together. And I'm just going to keep going, and when I get to the end, I'm going to cut it off, you know, secure it, and do the same thing on the other side. You may have noticed that I do use a lot of pins and pin things together. The nice thing about pins is if you're careful, if you need to, you can try it on and see, you know, if it's falling the way you want to, or if you can look at the fabric to see, you know, if you want to reposition anything or whatever. At this point, with it being already cut and pretty much sewn, it kind of sort of is what it is, but at the off chance that I may have wanted to use the other piece on this side, or you know, switch something around, or even flip the whole piece around and done something else with it, you know, I could have done that if I hadn't sewn it down. But pin, look at it from all angles, see if you like it, and then pin again. I guess I say that if you're doing like you freestyle woven, you know, and just kind of woven without intention, so all of the different aspects of the fabric will look different depending on where you're looking. All right, we are down to the finish line. We're going to go ahead and attach the straps. If you follow me on social media, or if you are a part of the bigger Rigid Heddle weaving group, then you may have seen this video of me sewing on the strap. And I have it going about the same speed as I had it in the video. Oh, I guess I should have said that. I am not really sewing this fast. On any of these different clips you've seen, I've sped them all up to double time, so that it's not going to take as long. It took me about an hour to make the or to sew together all of the pieces that I've shown you today. I've condensed that down to about 20 minutes for the sake of time. And so yeah, this is the part that I think you probably saw if you saw it on social media. If you don't follow me, do follow me on Instagram at Amy D. McKnight, and I generally will try to post what I'm doing. I try to post daily. Sometimes I haven't made anything, and so I don't post anything, but I do post something throughout the week. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew the straps on both sides, and what you want to do is you know, get them on there real good. Like, I'm really going back and forth, and it's multiple layers, but you really want to make sure that that is on there really good. You don't want it to pull, and your straps are supporting the majority of the weight of your garment, so, or this particular garment. So you really want to take your time and sew them on and secure them well so that you're not having any type of clothing malfunction when you wear this thing. I sewed the pieces on, and then I just kind of went to see where they would fit the best, and then I went and sewed the other part down. So when I come back, you're going to see me put the last piece on, and then we're going to be done. Alrighty, so now we're going to attach the rest of our straps. We've sewn it, and you'll see how it looks, or if you remember from the picture, this part that we sewed on first is actually going to be on the front. We're now sewing the bottom of the strap to the back of the garment, and you can kind of position them, eyeballing. You kind of want them equal distance apart on the back, or just try it on, go look in a mirror, play with it, and then you know, move it until it fits you as you would want. I had a little bit, one of my straps was slightly longer than the other, the one that has the one on the left side of your screen, but when I sewed it all down, everything came together and everything worked out. But you may just want to go ahead and try it on before you do this final sew the bottom part on, and you've got it all done. So pretty much that is it with this garment. Once I finish this other strap, then I will be completely done. It took me maybe an hour or about 90 minutes or so to sew this all down. Now, of course, that's not counting weaving all of this, because I wove one piece at one point, another piece at another point, and just had it put away. And when I got the spirit, I decided, oh, okay, I think I'm going to try, you know, this. I will give you a quick tip. If you are looking for ideas for where to find patterns, you can look at simple sewing patterns that have just simple boxy shapes. Also look at some sewing patterns or knitting and crocheting patterns that are made up of rectangles. Just think outside the scarf. There's so much more that you can do with your cloth, and if you just get a little creative, you can make some really cool things. So there it is. It is all done. It is all sewn, and I'll just let you take a look at the finished pictures.